And we just got to take the hat off for Samsung here. I mean, they were far and away the best team today. I think especially we should look at Game 1 and Game 2, where H2K tried their best, but Samsung were able to match them early on and then, of course, beat them in the mid to late game. Last game here is where you just try something. You're desperate. You go for every single play you can. Backfires very early, and then the game snowballs out of control.
Definitely agree. And there were moments where H2K were able to pull out some big plays. Jankos in the jungle early had a lot of moments where he shined through. They were able to have a couple of collapses there. But honestly, what this does mainly is build up that story for Samsung headed towards SKT. Definitely the underdogs, but really where is their peak? After only dropping a single game in this tournament, you know, they've been just rising and rising and rising.
I'm going to go back to the question you asked about 10 minutes ago, CuVee. What is the power level of Samsung Galaxy? Where are they truly? Madison Square Garden, Samsung Galaxy advance to the World Final to face off against SK Telecom T1. Individually, it feels like every single member of this team has provided phenomenal performances throughout the majority of the group stage.
Yeah, and I think after a lot of people saw week 2 and how Samsung, even ROX, and of course SKT were playing, I think a lot of people were actually expecting a Korea versus Korea final, because these teams are just looking so good and no other team have been able to challenge really any of them, especially not in BO5s. We've seen a few one-offs and best of ones, but as soon as we got into playoffs, LPL couldn't challenge them, Europe couldn't challenge, NA couldn't challenge. No one could really do anything against these 3 powerhouses from Korea, and that's why we now get SKT versus Samsung in the final.
We're gonna have another series to talk about the Samsung story, but for H2K, they still showed up. When you look at the European LCS as a whole, H2K, the underdogs. There was some expectation maybe they can make it out more so than Splice, despite you know, not having the greatest end to the summer split. But it's just a sour taste to end what was actually a fairly positive World Championship.
Exactly. I saw some of the tweets from some of the players before the games. They're like, we want to go in here, we want to show how good we can be. We had Forgiven talk about in one of the interviews, you know, the highs of H2K are really high, the lows can be fairly low. I don't think they underperformed in Game 1 and Game 2 at all. I actually think they were very competitive. Problem for them is Samsung could just match them again, as we talked about again and again. Individually, Samsung can match every single player. And then Samsung is just a better team as well and much smarter about how to play the game later on. And then it's really difficult if you're a team who relies on winning that early game to get your big advantage.
I think H2K can definitely be proud of getting to this point. I mean, their expectations for them were nowhere near semifinals, and they definitely were able to show up on that stage.
Yeah, they really did. It is unfortunate to see that in Game 3 they really got crushed, but as you mentioned, Deficio, Game 1 and 2, the early games, some of the outplays, and then just the big questions, you know, what happened to Ryu today? Because he was not the Ryu from last week or from, you know, week 2 in San Francisco.
No, definitely not. He looked so good before this. Can look at Crown, give him a lot of credit for that one. He's obviously a fantastic mid laner. He's played better than some of the other guys Ryu has played against so far in the tournament, and we saw that.
Can Crown step up against Faker next week?
Definitely waiting to see that. I'm super excited now for this finals to see the clash, because a lot of people thought, you know, only ROX would be able to challenge SKT. And now we get a chance, you know, at Samsung trying their hand.
I mean, that was a Korea versus Korea semifinal that went to 5 games. The storyline of Blank and Bengi is going to be talked about for a long time. Now you're going to add Ambition into there, a jungler with arguably even more story than these guys. How does Ambition match up, CuVee?
I mean, guys? If you're, yeah, exactly. You're matching, you know, the Bengi story of the veteran coming back in with Ambition, who's been playing since 2012, switching roles, trying so hard.
The best player to never make Worlds, and now he's in a World Final.
Whew. And he's been able to mold this entire team, right? You talked about it a little bit during the cast with the shot calling of him coming in, and that very much is in Korean culture with the elder on the team, demanding a lot of respect as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool part, you know, with the shot calling, making them a super strong late game team, but also just individual performance from Ambition. Like, he wasn't always a jungler, he was a mid laner who turned into
especially
a jungler.
That third game. Part of the reason it was such a smash.
I mean, we've seen this all tournament long. I feel I can remember like one really bad game he had against TSM very early on. There we go, we got to add it into the cast. And then we just had basically a perfect performance from Ambition ever since. And that's something that really stands out to me, that a guy like him can show up big time now. He was great, obviously, in the summer split from Samsung. And many of these members just stepping up big time.
Was it a mistake to not ban Victor? Was Victor part of the reason? I mean, Ryu didn't play well, but like, would that have made any difference?
Crown's Rise is also incredibly impressive. So like, you have to do some other things, pick it away, you know, first pick if you aren't going to. And
I think you should have banned it. I don't think you would have won.
No, it wouldn't have made a difference, probably, is what it boiled down to. Gentlemen, thank you for the insight and thank you for the cast. For now, we're going to head down to Shox for a post-game discussion with Samsung Star in the mid lane.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Indeed, standing by with Crown, who had an absolutely fantastic series. The first thing I want to ask you about is the aggression of H2K in the early game throughout that series. Every single time you guys had an answer for it and you could turn it around. How did you do that consistently throughout the series?
이제 H2K 팀이 이제 매 경기마다 초반에 적극적으로 공세를 펼치면서 이제 삼성팀을 압박했는데 또 그때마다 매번 이제 침착하게 맞받치면서 경기를 이제 승리로 이끄셨습니다. 어떻게 그렇게 매 경기마다 초반 난관을 극복하셨는지 말씀해 주세요.
네, 그 H2K 팀이 초반에 엄청 매섭게 잘 플레이를 하는 거를 경기에서 계속 봤어요. 그래서 저희도 준비하면서 초반만 조심하자 이렇게 생각하면서 이제 초반에 좀 조심하면서 했는데도 엄청 매섭게 해서 네, 좀 실수가 많았는데 그래도 이제 그때마다 저희가 중요한 거를 좀 계속 생각하면서 서로 콜을 해서 계속 중요한 거는 지키면서 플레이를 했기 때문에 역전이 가능했던 것 같아요.
So while preparing for this match, we saw that H2K put a lot of emphasis in the early game and their aggression in the early game. So we just kept telling ourselves that we have to be careful in the early game and not make those mistakes. Yet we did had some difficult time because of H2K's aggressions, but we just kept on talking how we should not give up the important objects like towers and like dragons, and through that, I think we were able to turn around the game.
And you guys closed it out 3-0. You are now on a 10-game winning streak and into the final. No other team at this tournament can say that. How have you been able to dominate every single one of your opponents in that 10-game winning streak?
지금 삼성팀은 이번 대회에서 유일하게 10연승을 지금 하고 있는 팀인데요. 그 10연승을 올릴 수 있었던 비결이 무엇이 있을까요?
비결은 그냥 일단 다들 열심히 했고 그다음 하늘에서 도와주신 것 같아요. 운이 좀 많이 따랐던 것 같아요. 네.
So I think with a bit of luck and everybody's hard effort, we were able to do that 10-game win streak.
Well, a bit of luck, maybe still no Korean team met, but now you're going up against the defending world champions, SKT, at Staples Center. What are your hopes and goals for that matchup, as it will be a tough nut to crack?
이제 드디어 마지막 끝판왕인 SKT, 이제 전 시즌 우승팀이 SKT와 이제 LA 스테이플 센터에서 붙게 되었는데요. SKT와의 대전에서 어떠한 기대치를 이제 가지고 계신가요?
결승을 가는 게 지금 좀 가는 게 맞는지 싶어요. 지금 기분이. 근데 어제 경기를 보고 새로운 목표가 생겼는데 SK를 이기려면 미드를 이겨야 되는 것 같아요. 그래서 이기고 싶어졌어요. 그래서 열심히 할 거고 네, 지켜봐 주세요. 감사합니다.
I still can't even believe that we're going to the finals, but watching SKT's match yesterday, I had a new goal. I realized that in order to beat SKT, we have to win in the mid lane. So my new goal is to beat Faker, and I would really like to accomplish that. So keep cheering for us, and thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. We will see if that happens. Crown and Samsung Galaxy off to Staples Center to the final of the World Championship.